Hello everyone. Today's topic will be on the theory of conflict as given by Mary Parker Follet. Now this is a very simple theory and very easy to understand also, but nevertheless it's a very important topic. Mary Parker Follet, there are two things that is very special about Mary Parker Follet. First of all, she is the only lady administrative thinker that we will study about in your entire syllabus. And secondly, Mary Parker Follet is considered to be a bridge between the classical era and the modern era because she was so far ahead of her times that even though she lived during the classical era, her ideas, her theories could be part of the theories of the modern era. Okay. So Mary Parker Follet, born in 1868, died in 1933, has a prominent place among administrative thinkers. She was American. She was a writer. She was a social worker. She was administrative theorist, a consultant in management, philosopher, and a pioneer in the field of organization theory and organizational behavior. She carved out a prominent place for herself as a woman in what was then largely a man's world. She is known as the mother of modern management. Peter Drucker calls her the prophet of modern management because she was so far ahead of her times. Okay, she was largely ignored in the 20th century, basically because she was a woman, and her ideas, her books, and her essays were in the corners of the management and academic studies, while most of the men during that time dominated the academic world during that time. But today her ideas are more relevant than ever. Okay, so what is special about Mary Parker Follet is that she draws examples from real life, and she presented her ideas with simplicity and lucidity. She was a very gifted writer known for her practical wisdom. She usually illustrated her theories with simple examples that anyone can understand from real life situations. Okay, and that's why she's so special. She's known for her other theories on power, authority, and control, and depersonalizing orders. In fact, this theory on depersonalizing orders is one of the theories that I like very much and used to be in your syllabus. But now this particular theory, depersonalizing orders, have been removed from your syllabus and has been replaced with this theory of conflict. Okay, this is also a very interesting topic. Mary Parker Follet wrote a number of books. Some of her books are Creative Experience, The New State, Dynamic Administration, Speaker of the House of Representatives, etc., etc. In this topic, we are going to talk about her theory of conflict or theory of constructive conflict. So Mary Parker Follet, she gave high importance to the problems of conflict, and in 1925 she presented a paper, and the name of the paper was Constructive Conflict, in a conference held by the Bureau of Personnel Administration. Her ideas on conflict resolution, her basic ideas on conflict in general, as written in the paper, as articulated in the paper, it has become the basic premises for studying conflict and the principles of conflict resolution. Mary Parker Follet advanced the idea that conflict is a normal process in any activity of the organization, and it is up to the management to deal with the conflict and bring some positive outcome from that conflict. Now, what is conflict? According to Mary Parker Follet, conflict is a natural process in any activity of the organization by which our differences, our socially valuable differences, show themselves, register themselves for the enrichment of all concerned. Okay, and she says that it is an inevitable part of life and should not be regarded as neither good nor bad. It is simply the appearance of differences. We are different in our background, in our opinions, in our ideas, in our attitudes, and that is the reason that we have conflicts. According to Follet, conflict does not necessarily have to lead to harmful outcomes. Rather, if we approach our conflicts with the right analytical and imaginative tools, a conflict can present an opportunity for positive and constructive development. Hence the title of the paper. Follet writes, I should like you to agree for the moment to think of conflict as neither good nor bad, to consider it without ethical prejudgment, to think of it not as warfare, but as an appearance of difference. Magandang lamavangkan. We have different backgrounds, we have different ideas, we have different attitudes, We have different opinions. Kami kandang lam na laulan chua naka conflict to ani. For that is what conflict means. Difference. So conflict means difference according to Follet. And as conflict is here in the world, it will always be here. We cannot avoid it. It is inevitable. And we should use it instead of condemning it in such a way that it will work out for all of us. Now, according to Mary Parker Follet, there are 3 ways to respond to conflict. There are 3 ways to deal and resolve conflicts. Number 1 is dominance, number 2 is compromise, and number 3 is integration. So these are 3 ways to deal with conflict according to Mary Parker Follet: domination, compromise, and integration. Domination. The first one is domination. Domination is the easiest way of resolving conflict and means victory of one side over the other. And dominance works in the short term but is unproductive in the long run, because aside from the fact that it causes discomfort to the dominated, the repressed tendencies, helaya anva repress a tendency anva repress sakaka a dominated a tan khan no kami kha lo chwa adu reng ta, the repressed tendencies is always there, and as and when it gets an opportunity, kami repressed tendency kha alo chuak le chin ta chu wang chon conflict kha an ina taka chon domination manghian, it cannot be resolved permanently atiani. And second method is compromise. Compromise means each party gives up something for the sake of a meaningful reduction of friction. Conflict solve thein tu khan the parties who are in conflict with one another give up some part of their desires for the sake of resolving the conflict. So it is generally the way most people settle their conflicts, and it involves giving up a little part of their desires. That way the conflict can be resolved. Far from ideal, this method of resolving conflict often leaves party unsatisfied. Both the parties involved in the conflict are unsatisfied. Even though the conflict may be resolved temporarily, the root of the problem is always there, because both sides have given up something, some part of their desire which they value. So this also is not a permanent method of resolution of conflict. And the third method suggested by Mary Parker Follet to resolve conflict is integration. So integration is the option that has been championed by Follet. According to Follet, this is the method by which conflicts can be resolved constructively for the betterment of all concerned. Okay. In this method, the two parties and their two desires who are in conflict with one another are integrated, and neither side needs to sacrifice their desires. So according to Follet, when two desires are integrated, that means that a solution has been found in which both desires have found a place. Neither side needs to give up anything, neither side has to sacrifice anything. So Follet writes that integration has a lot of advantage, say for example over compromise, in which case the conflict will come up again and again in some form or the other, because in compromise we give up some part of our desires and we shall not be content with there, and sometimes we shall try to get the whole of our desires if opportunity presents themselves. And compromise does not create anything new, whereas integration creates something new. It leads to invention and to the emergence of new ideas. It leads to the invention of new values. Okay, and it goes to the root of the problem and puts an end to the conflict permanently. Follet is aware that integration is not always possible. It's not always a viable option. She provides the example of two men wanting to marry one woman. Okay, so in such a case, integration may not be possible. And she also says that there are a lot of obstacles in the way to achieving integration. Follet talks about the basis of integration, or the methods and rules to resolve conflict through integration, or what I've mentioned before, the basis of integration. So the basis of integration are: number 1, discuss differences instead of ignoring them; number 2, discuss interests and demands; number 3, anticipating conflict. So we will discuss this in a more detailed manner. The first one is uncovering. This is the first method to achieve integration according to Follet, and it involves bringing out the real differences out in the open. So taking examples from psychology, she says that real desires and real motives of both parties have to be uncovered. The parties who are involved in the conflict may not really bring out their real desires more, and in that case, integrative resolution of conflict cannot be achieved. The first rule then for obtaining integration is to bring out our differences in the open. Put your cards on the table. Face the real issue. Uncover the conflict. Bring the whole thing into the open. Mo anong anin ngirngaw na chan diktak ka an desire diktak ka andu na tele an base na zongzong ka siyang taka soichua uncovering the problem. And this type of uncovering in the context of conflict and negotiation explained by Follet often leads to re-evaluation of one's desires and interests. Ang desires and interests ka ansoy ang kaalaw nila may ni asan to kami pena kan til dang kaalaw in tup ni tiyan. Okay, and the second base is in that so the same process it's interconnected to one another, uncovering the second step, which is breaking up of demands. Okay, so the second and related step for Follet is to break up the demands of each party into its constituent parts so that the real desires of both the parties who are involved in the conflict may come out in the open. Breaking up the whole means paying special attention to the language used in the conflict. What is behind the word? Until soyachang kan ang desire tak ka mo until tumaka asya ni tiani. For example, according to Follet, if somebody wants to go to Europe, is it really a desire to go to Paris or Barcelona? Or is it because that person wants to travel, he has a deep need to experience life anew and meet different people? And this can be achieved not just by going to Europe, but somewhere else where that same desire can be fulfilled. Okay, so if so, is there another way to fulfill this need? Because there may be various methods, various ways, various solutions to fulfilling the desire of the persons involved in the conflict. And so once the whole of the conflict is broken up, it needs to be reconstructed anew with the focus on the essential. Engi antum tak engi andu tak ka kan shared fi apotlo chuan conflict ka it may not be resolved constructively through the use of integration. And thirdly, anticipation of conflict. This is the third base of integration or the third method to deal with conflict, to resolve conflict through integration. So anticipation, it does not mean to avoid conflict, but to respond to it differently. For example, according to Follet, she gives an example of a man who likes to go for a ride in his motor. He likes motoring. So, but his wife likes to work. His wife likes working. So what the husband does is that he anticipated what her response would be and suggested that they go for a ride on Sunday afternoon after tiring her out, playing tennis with her in the morning. So zing lama kan tennis an kelto bang kan alaw ka to ito ka sabang chuanin walking ka ape to lo tani khati hunlai taka kan he strikes mo and he invites her to go motoring, to go for a ride. It's one ultimately she agrees with her husband who wants to go motoring. In this way, anticipation of conflict, preparing of response by building certain attitudes in the people is one of the bases of resolution of conflict through integration. Now, Follet also explains that there are various obstacles to integration. Integration is not easy to achieve because of various reasons. First of all, Follet explains that integration requires high intelligence, keen perception, inventiveness, and imagination, which generally is in short supply. We do not have the type of intelligence and perception, inventiveness, and imagination that is required for integrative solution of conflicts, especially during the time of conflicts. Yani, but that's one. Secondly, our way of life has habituated us to take pleasure in domination. So domination gives us a certain thrill, to have victory over another side, and it gives us the excitement of winning. And this cannot be achieved in the integrative resolution of conflict. So that is why we have a tendency, a desire to dominate rather than to find a solution that will fit all of our desires, all of our wants and needs through the process of integration. And third obstacle is integration is usually confined to the world of theory. Follet believes that we tend to theorize a problem instead of facing them, instead of treating as practical issues needing immediate solutions. So we do not face the problem, we run away from the problem instead of trying to find a resolution to that problem. So that is the third obstacle. And the fourth obstacle to integration is
the language we use. No, she says that the way we communicate with each other is the obstacle we face in constructive resolution of conflict. So when we are in conflict with one another, we have a tendency to blame others. We have a tendency to use very strong languages more, and this can hinder the smooth process of conflict resolution through integration. And finally, Follet feels that the greatest obstacle to integration is lack of education and lack of training, because resolution of conflict through integration requires, like I said before, intelligence, keen perception, inventiveness, imagination, and this is a skill that can only acquired through education and training. So this is in short supply, and so therefore is the greatest obstacle to achieving integration in conflict resolution. Okay. Patitin Kanise, thank you so much for your time. I said before that this was a very simple theory, very easy to understand also, but nevertheless a very, very important topic. Okay. Thank you.